Welcome to the Around the Maritime podcast. Mavs Gillis, Jeremy Boucher. Jeremy, it's just been a couple days since I saw you. We were at the Q finals together, but how are you?
Doing well. It's good. We made it. We made it to the finals, and it was good to see you too, amongst 9,000 people on Saturday at the Avenir.
Again, night one, the biggest crowd for a Q game this year. So that is in the playoffs, I should say.
Mhm.
Saw that from our friend of the program, Jamie Tozer, Station Nation, getting that out there. But a tip of the hat to everyone in Moncton there, and the Wildcat up 2-0 on Rimouski in this series. But before we get into the finals, I do want to say to the Shawinigan Cataracts, when we had Jim Holton on, we started talking about the finals, about what was looking, what could be, and what did become the Oceanic versus the Moncton Wildcats.
Yeah.
Man, Shawinigan did not go out quietly into the night. They played a hell of a series against the Rimouski Oceanic, forcing it to double overtime in Game 7. I was sweating a little because I was like, man, we talked about the finals and it's like we wrote them off. So, Shawinigan, we're familiar with your game, and I just want to say hats off to you on a tremendous season as well, and especially pushing this team that Rimouski is hosting the Memorial Cup. I know they're battling injuries, but you pushed them right to the limit, and it showed in Game 1.
The, Schwinnigan didn't give up. I mean, they really were the cardiac cats, if you want to put it that way. They're down 2-0 in the series, and most people think it's over, right? And then all of a sudden, it's a series. They did not want to go away, and they scratched and they clawed, and they almost pulled it off. It was pretty remarkable. But at the end of the day, I think Rimouski's depth kind of won that series for them. And there was Eric Smateko. Once that overtime started, I said to myself, a lot of these players look gassed on both teams, and the only player that on the ice that seemed to have his legs still was Eric Smateko. And look who scored that Game 7 winning goal. It was quite the shot. But no, Schwinnigan's got a very bright future. They're going to be up there next season amongst the top teams. But no, Rimouski gets Moncton. It's the top two teams in the league. I don't think you want to. It's the best final. When it's the top two teams going up against each other. Both have got their Mem Cup bids, sealed up, and right now it's just a matter of who's going to lift the Gilles Courteau Trophy. Moncton's in the driver's seat, but it's not over.
No, it definitely isn't over, and especially and seeing that in Game 2. And I don't want to double overtime, but the fight back from the Oceanic in that game, and now I think Rimouski's going to pull from that semifinal that we just talked about with Shawinigan and say, guys, they were down 2-0, and they were a bouncer away from being in our situation. It's time for us to find a way to turn things off. And again, I don't count out Matthew Cataford and great goaltending LaSalle, and even they're starting to get some bodies back. But that Game 1 for the Wildcats, the commitment to defense in that first 40 minutes, blocking shots. I think what were the shots like 16 to 3 at the end of the first there? It was something. It was something absurd in favor of the Wildcats.
Yeah, I think they'd only given up 14 shots or something like that all game, and it took Rimouski I think 11 minutes to get their first shot on goal. It was a clinic by the Wildcats D, and uh, Rimouski came on in the third period. They wanted to make a game of it. They almost did. But at the end of the day, it was just I think they were too tired. Being a long series and then a quick turnaround. But Game 2 was a much different story. They were a much different team. They were aggressive. Attacking the Wildcats D, hitting them hard. It was Moncton had to make some adjustments to have success in that game, and they did. Rimouski also made the adjustments, right? So it was no surprise that game went into overtime, let alone double overtime.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those, the goals, double overtime goals. They're usually not the prettiest, but they count the most. And the fireworks went off for the Moncton Wildcats to go up 2 games to none in that series as it switches up to Rimouski. Rudy Guimont and Mathis Rousseau, again, the tag team in between the pipes for the Wildcats. Mathis, who has been to the finals before with the Halifax Mooseheads, trying to have a better ending than last time. And Rudy Guimont, still undefeated in this Q season, in his Q career. This guy's got the Undertaker like streak at WrestleMania going right now. And I know Undertaker went 31-0. If he can, hey, if Rudy goes 31, uh, that's a Memorial Cup for you, probably.
Yeah, yeah, you're not. It's no joke. It's something. It's something else. He's working for a contract here. If Detroit doesn't sign him, he's back in the draft this June. So he's working for that contract, and by the way he's playing, it could very well happen. And at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. I think Detroit would be silly not to sign a goalie that's 23-0. It's I don't think anybody would have predicted that. Not a lot of people knew who Rudy Guimont was when he came to Moncton, but he's just been just an incredible addition to the team, and him and Mathis are just going shot for shot right now. It's I think we've only seen the same goalie play back to back games once in the playoffs, and from a Moncton standpoint. And I don't see a scenario or a reason why they would change. I just the saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Just keep it going. It gives the opposition a different look every night, and that's the Gardner McDougall way of doing things. Give them don't have your game plan predictable. Give them something different.
The Wildcat Dream Killer Tour continues. The tour is continuing for Louis Robitaille,
Mm.
as after coaching 2 seasons with the Cape Breton Eagles, it's announced today that he is on his way to the VHL. He will be coaching in Russia next year, and that is, again, we got to cover Louis and the Eagles quite a bit with Eastlink, especially in their deep playoff run. And we're gonna have Nicolas Ruccia on the program today to talk a bit about that run. But it's a team that faltered out in the playoffs this year, and Louis, from my understanding, he even said, at the end of the season, I might even, yeah, you don't know what's going to happen next year. Maybe I'm in Russia. Well, guess what? He is on his he's on his way to coach professional hockey over in Russia. It's certainly it's a shock and a surprise to the Cape Breton Eagles. All the best to Louis. Love chatting with him around the rink, and he's always got an interesting perspective on things. I think him going to Russia is gonna be a bit like a sitcom, to be honest. It's gonna be an adjustment for him. I hope he gives us an update or two there. But the update now is for the Cape Breton Eagles with that head coaching job open. Nick McNeil, as the assistant's already said, he is stepping aside. Matt
Mhm.
Anthony has got to, I'd have to say, has to be in consideration for the head coaching position with the Cape Breton Eagles, because he has been there for quite a few years now. But and there's also plenty of good coaches, not just in the Q ranks, but also Maritime Hockey League and even U18 that could be looking at that opportunity in Cape Breton as a chance for them to get their first shot in the queue.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was just thinking of names off the top of my head. Jim Midgley, Sean Evans. It's those are just two local guys that could step into that role, and Cape Breton's going to be a rebuilding team next year. So it's to bring in a fresh face is not necessarily a bad idea. A young mind brings new ideas, and I think it's going to be good for Cape Breton. You look at what Andrew Lord did with Halifax this year. A young guy with even though his resume wasn't exactly a mile long, right? He had the credentials to go in there, and the players bought in, and I think that's something you need in Cape Breton next year. Because they're going to need experience, but they're also going to need a motivator to get behind these young players.
Well, and you bring up names. Sean Evans is a great name. Billy McGuigan with the
Mhm.
Summerside Capitals is a guy that I think deserves a shot at the Q. Kyle McClellan, who has coached with the
Yeah.
Weeks U18 club, and what's going on in Pictou. And I know we've with Eastlink, we've had a chance to be in Pictou for MHL hockey. We've covered their U18 runs. The Bombers, the Warewell Bombers, also a program that has turned things around there. Kyle it'd be a good chance for him to get an opportunity in the queue. But again, and Matt Anthony as well. There's certainly no shortage of names around here. But you talk about Andrew Lord, and that's a situation where the Mooseheads went completely off the board and found a guy that, he did have some connections to the queue because he had a chance to play with Joey Haddad. He had a chance to play with Steven Dixon, a chance to play with Chris Culligan. So he was familiar with some of the names, and of course, being familiar with just the standard of hockey here to get himself acclimated to up here. But again, if you once the name Andrew Lord came out as the head coach of the Halifax Mooseheads, my first Google search was who is Andrew Lord, because we had not heard of anything of him, and he did a fantastic job with the Mooseheads this year. So it's going to be an interesting to see where the Eagles front office goes in filling that role at head coach.
Yeah, I don't think it's something that they need to rush their decision through. Training camp doesn't start for another 2 months. Do you need a head coach for the draft? Yeah, it'd be nice, but at the same time, it's not. I don't think it's a prerequisite or anything like that. So I think they'll take their time with this decision. When we mention names, it's no disrespect to Matt Anthony or anything like that. He'd be a great great guy behind the bench, great hair. It's to have a flow like that behind the bench in the queue. It brings back Mario DeRoche days, and just a tremendous head of hair.
Matt Anthony will love that for sure. And yes, he does have great hair. I agree. And my hair is currently cut off. I know that Matt and I've compared mullets in the past, and yeah, no, Matt's gotten a couple of gray hairs over the years in Cape Breton. Though I mean, I've got the poly walnuts on the go too. But yeah, I think we're starting to show our age around this league. But no, it's going to be. I'm very curious to see where the Cape Breton brass goes with this choice at head coach. And speaking of choices, the Euro draft is coming up, and this
Yeah.
year, for
Mm.
the first time, it's now 3 Euro imports per Q team as opposed to two. So you're going to see a very active market in the Euro import selections to see who and where they'll be going.
Yeah, for sure. That was a nice change. And not only 3 Euro picks, you can now trade your Euro picks as well. So that's you're going to see these big blockbuster trades that are not just going to have Q draft picks; they're going to have import draft picks, which is going to be nice. You look back at the day where Ivan Barbashev was a Moncton Wildcat because the Wildcats traded for the first overall pick in the import draft, right? So that's how he ends up in Moncton. It was just that was a wild time to be alive, and it's good to see those times back. It was those were different trades. Let's put it that way.
Now we move on, and it's of course Q Awards, the Golden Pucks, and every time I think of Golden Puck, and I know Raphael and the league are going to say, Mavs, please don't associate our league awards with foil wrapped chocolate, but I just think Golden Puck. I think of a solid chocolate hockey puck wrapped in gold foil. But the golden pucks are out, and we've got a couple winners. The David Desharnais Trophy goes to Julius Sumpf for the Wildcats. It's the most sportsmanlike player while being effective. Matt Butler from the Islanders also nominated there. So good for Mr. Sumpf, and you got to see him. And again, he's been a tremendous asset for the Wildcats.
Yeah, I mean, what can you ask for? When he ends up being a free agent, I mean, what a find! What a find in the free agent pool, and it just so happened to be one of those loopholes that the Wildcats managed to find. It's almost like the Miles Mueller rule, where you've got a parent that is from the Q territory. Well, you can end up being a Q drafted player. It was the same thing with Julius Sump, and his mom's from Montreal, I think. And so since his mom's from Montreal, she falls within the Q territory, so you can sign as a free agent with in the Q. Different, but not complaining. He's been a huge acquisition, and him playing with Pekarchik and Dunoyer, they've been, they're just having those three are just having fun right now on the ice.
Alex Carr taking home the Kevin Lowe Trophy, top defensive defenseman, and 4 years in the league for Alex Carr out of Middle Sackville. You gotta, I don't know if you're aware, but lower, middle, and upper Sackville, there was some designations there, and he made sure to inform us it's Middle Sackville. He's off to UNH next year, though, the University of New Hampshire. But him taking home top defensive defenseman of this year, and it was good to see him get a chance to go for a skate at the Scotiabank Center during the playoffs, and then in that sweep over the Halifax Mooseheads.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people, everybody will remember him as being a Ruiner and a Husky, but not a lot of people remember him. He was actually originally drafted by the Mooseheads. So, you just remember him as being a Husky and finish his career with the C on his jersey. And, it just shows the kind of organization they have up there in Rouen where, your captain last year was from Riverview, New Brunswick, and your captain this year was from Middle Sackville, Nova Scotia.
Thank you, Middle
I was
Sackville.
about to say Halifax, but it just you send these I want to say English kids to Rouyn-Noranda, and they come out fully bilingual, wearing the C on their jersey. It just says a lot about the education program they have up there, and just the organization as well. To turn these maritime kids into leaders on their team.
Then we've wrapped things off. Paul Dumont Trophy. Of course, there's other awards, but we're running through the guys from the Maritimes. Caleb Desnoyers taking away that award with the Wildcats, and said 7th in North American skaters in the NHL Central Scouting right now. Desnoyers, his first assist in this finals was incredible. Like the double drag, and then the find on the doorstep weak side for Desnoyers on the power play. That was again, that is top tier talent on display with Caleb Desnoyers.
You could hear the oohs and ahs in the crowd as soon as he made that first move, and as soon as that happened, you knew something special was going to happen, and it was easily the highlight of the night. It was an unbelievable assist. It's it still plays in my head, and it's so funny because I was looking up some mock drafts today, and I saw one that still had him available at 16th overall, and I'm like, that's the first one I've seen where he's still available after 8th. So it's definitely an outlier, and because he's the highest NHL drafted Moncton Wildcat was Brandon Gormley at 13th overall. Believe it or not, as long as the Wildcats have been around, Brandon Gormley still is the highest NHL drafted player, and Caleb Desnoyers will easily smash that if things go his way.
Well, I do want to thank Marty Kingston for allowing me to come on the intermission. The first intermission, it was myself and Craig Eagles. Second intermission was the Wildcast. Marty Kingston knows how to book the talent to come on intermissions for Wildcats games. But I bring that up because Craig was going on about how there's no way Desnoyers is going to be in at 7th, and that's where his Bruins are going. And I just started saying, "Oh, Craig, you're on your hands and knees praying that he goes there, so he goes to your Boston Bruins." And Craig was saying, "I of course, but it's not going to happen, Nats. It's not going to happen." I'm like, you never know, man. You never know. He could be a Boston Bruin, and had some fun there. But again, a big thanks to Marty on that spot. But yeah, it is from in that spot. And again, I'm not a National Hockey League general manager, so I'm never going to be able to put a name down on a sheet of paper and hand it in for the commissioner of the NHL to read off at the draft. But I think for Desnoyers, what's going to move him up into that upper echelon of a top 5 or potentially top 3 pick is going to be the performance at the Memorial Cup. And that's where general managers are going to be able to say, we have seen this kid all season long, and he's been on our radar for years. And now against the best of the best in the biggest tournament uh, before his draft year.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
he is
It's,
able to excel there, then that is what's going to propel him out of that 6, 7 spot up into a higher draft ranking.
I mean, we've already seen what he's been able to do against Rimouski. It'll be, if it's a London Knights, let's see what he can do against a Sam Dickinson or an Easton Cowan, or Sim, right? Or you look at Oshawa, it could be Ben Danford on the back end, and Colby Barlow out west. You look at Gavin McKenna, it could be Berkeley Catton. How is he going to perform against these players that are already NHL drafted? Right? With the exception of McKenna, how is he going to do? Like, these guys are first round picks, right? How is he going to? Can he separate himself from those names? And if you're right, if he does, I think he sneaks his way into the top 5.
Well, it's going to be close, that Memorial Cup. Can't wait for it. Cannot wait. I know Moncton or Rimouski, they got their tickets punched no matter what. But Wednesday and Thursday, 3 and 4 up in Rimouski, and then that'll tell the tale if we're gonna have any games back in the 506 this year at the Big Ear, the Avenir Center. I forget who did I say that to?
You
I
said it to
said
me.
I said it to you, no, but I said it to Brent DeBorn, and I was
Oh
trying to
yes,
explain to him what the Big
yeah.
Ear meant, and I don't know if he got it or not. But again, I do want to take a second to just say thank you again to everyone at the Avenir Center and the league as well, RDS, for letting me for having me run around a little bit and have some stuff there. I also got to hang out with Ralph, hang out with Alex, and hang out with Vero. No, what's
Yeah.
Vero? What's her last name?
Arsenal, yeah.
Arsenal.
Yeah.
There we go. I almost said the last name of a friend's ex-girlfriend named Vero. Vero Arsenal. Again, thank you again. It was great to be up in Moncton, and you get to be and seeing Adam as well. You get to be there all the time. It's a novelty for me to go and be at a game in Street Close.
Well, it's always a big event when Mavs Gillis comes to Moncton.
Top billing. And speaking of top billing, Nicolas Ruccia joining us after the break here on the Around the Maritimes podcast. Folks, we're talking about the perfect pair from Eastlink. It is unlimited mobile and a gig internet, and the price $99 a month. Unlimited mobile, gig internet. You saw my just, I can't believe this deal. That's why I had to mentally process it to ensure that I was getting the words out of my mouth right. 99 bucks a month. Now, this old kid, this old chunk of coal here is always running around with his phone and he's uploading everywhere, anywhere, sending out the videos, making sure that the old Eastlink Mavs, the TikToks, the Instagrams, the YouTubes, they're all being sent from this old device right here. And it's all powered by Eastlink Wireless. And how can I do it? You ask. Well, unlimited data and gig internet for 99 a month. And if you call 1-888-345-1111, visit eastlink.ca or stop in the store, talk to one of our great representatives. They can hook you up and they might even have a deal for you to ensure you get that TV coverage in there as well. I know our Q coverage of hockey is done for the year, but we still got a big sports schedule with Eastlink Community TV coming up. So you want to make sure you get in the store, get that deal, get that unlimited mobile, get that fast, blazing fast internet. And trust me, we've got big things to say about that internet and that next ad read. Oh, you're not going to want to miss it. We're talking with Nick Ruccia today. He was lightning fast in between the pipes in Cape Breton as well in Charlottetown, but this specifically is coming up for the folks in Cape Breton. Nicolas Ruccia joining us today on Around the Maritimes. Nick, thanks for taking the time. Always happy to chat with you. First off, love your thoughts on the year in Charlottetown.
Yeah, it was a great season. It was a different from being Cape Breton. It was definitely an adjustment, but you know, the staff and my billets were and the players too were just so welcoming, and it was a great time.
Growing up in you know much in I guess Mavs and I got a. I almost said Halifax, but I meant to say Middle Sackville, Nova Scotia. We were talking about Alex Carr. I almost said you were from Montreal, but you're actually from Laval. I'm not sure how you know how important that is for you, but I guess growing up in Laval, I have to assume you're a Habs fan.
Mhm.
So what's your I guess what's your favorite memory of watching the Canadians as a youngster?
It's tough. Because I have like it's so many bits and pieces for me. Like I remember times just being on my couch watching the game with my dad and my mom, or uh, I used to try and go to one game a year growing up, and like I was at that game when Pacioretty got hit by Chara and broke his neck, and that was just like a memory that like implanted in my head. Like I remember being around there and how like hostile the whole like area was. You know, everybody chanting for Chara like against him, and just how like I remember my dad like picking me up and walking out of the rink because of how like people like with Bruins fans were getting yelled at and everything. That was a pretty crazy experience. But yeah, so I'd say that's one of my core memories of watching the Canadians growing up. But as also like a lot of it was also just watching on the couch, you know, and I remember specific players
Your first core memory is being taken out of a Habs game because they want to kill Boston Bruins fans.
pretty much.
When you're watching specific players, who's modeling the game after you? Who are you modeling it after?
Growing up, it was always Price and Fleury. Price and Fleury for sure. Price because he has to, and Fleury because it's hard not to like him. You know, he was flashy, and I used to really like Pittsburgh too. So, um, yeah, those two. And now growing up, I've kind of looked at a lot of like Bobrovsky. I've been watching a ton of his video in the past 2 years. Um, I can see Blackwood, yeah, Pyotr Kochetkov. Like those goalies are ones that I watch a lot.
I guess when you're watching goalies, what's the first thing that jumps out at you for watching pros trying to emulate?
For me, it's the way they move their feet and the way they project themselves onto pucks. So like Bobrovsky, I model a lot of my game towards him in terms of the way he moves his feet and how yeah how he plays and how patient he is on his feet. Whereas like Kochetkov, I love watching him. He has a very awkward like stance and positioning, but I love watching him because of how every time he makes a save, his whole body's involved in making that save. So he's always leaning into the puck and making I guess the right movements in a sort of way. He's just like playing the odds. So I try and mix those two, and like Blackwood is just I think he can be the best goalie in the NHL one of these next years because the way he plays is like I love watching the way he plays, and I really think that like he has a big season coming up, especially now that he resigned in Colorado. So I just like the way they play, and I try to emulate certain things off of their styles.
With Marc Andre Fleury being one of the goalies that you grew up idolizing, was it extra special for you to be drafted by the Eagles?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy, and I didn't know that. Obviously, I found out where Cape Breton was a week before the draft, so uh, I didn't know much about it. But yeah, one of the first things was yeah, Fleury was drafted first overall out of the NHL, and he played in Cape, and um, yeah, like Cape Breton's goaltending history is pretty rich too. So with Pavlets and Mandleys, and I'm sure I'm forgetting um a couple names too. So they're not coming in my head right now, but yeah, like that was pretty crazy to see that.
Well, you talk about rich goaltending history, like your minor program, AMH Laval. There have been plenty of guys that have come out of that program as goalies. I mean, the first, the name that jumps off the page for me is his jersey's retired in Halifax is Jean Sebastian Jaguar.
Hmm.
When you're growing up in that type of culture, what are you picking up from seeing that some of the most successful hockey players from your area are guys that were tending the goal.
Well, it's just like there's so because Quebec dominated goaltending in the NHL for a long time, and there's a lot of knowledge here, and that's where, like, from what I heard, is like European goalie coaches came to Quebec to understand the ways of Quebec goaltending, brought that to Europe, and with mixed with their athleticism is why European goalies are dominating the NHL now. So growing up having access to so much knowledge, like my goalie coach, Mark Romando, I've been with him. I was one of his first goalies, and now I'm coaching his son. Like this summer, I'm coaching his son, and he actually just won a tournament or something like that. So it's pretty crazy. It's full circle, but yeah, like I said, there's just so much access to so much knowledge here, and there's so many people that are big in the hockey community.
Believe it or not, like next month will be 5 years since your Q draft,
Mhm.
and of course it was held virtually because of the pandemic. But what do you remember about that night? And I guess like how many teams did you interview with? And is there a question you were asked during the interview process that you found to be the most interesting one?
Um, In terms of interview questions, I don't remember any questions really sticking out to me. The only one I remember like real big one I remember was like it's not like as hardcore as the NHL, like all these questions about animals and whatever, but it was just like who would you take with you from your team? And I had like one guy had said was Angus Booth because I always found he flew under the radar, which he did, getting drafted fourth round. And then Charlottetown traded him to Shawinigan, and then now he's in the AHL. Um, but I'd pretty much interviewed with I think every team except Bathurst, and yeah, like it was pretty crazy. Like, it was pretty surreal because I feel like I was very naive and like I don't know, in Quebec, I guess I feel like you don't hear as much about the Q where you hear about the Canadians and this and that. So it's like I didn't know much about the Q until I was really in the process of going through it. And yeah, no, draft night was middle of COVID, so we were allowed 10 people in our backyard. I think we were 10. And at that time, cops would come check if you were the right amount of people, so we didn't take any risks. So we were the 10, and the draft had been so long because it was the first online one, so it was like a tester, and the draft took like 4 hours more than it was supposed to. And by the time I got drafted, it was night, and it started in the afternoon. But it was pretty cool hearing my name. We had a tent because it was raining, and extension cord with TV under the tent, and we were sitting under and watching it. So it was pretty cool.
I
I
think
remember.
the first round took forever because that Jacob Pelche trade took about 45 minutes to get announced.
It was crazy. They had like 8 minutes to make a pick. So it's like they had like 8 minutes to make a pick. Then they wasted the 8 minutes, then made a trade. It took the 8 minutes to announce a trade, then the 8 minutes to make the pick. And I think we had like three trades in a row, and it took forever.
You know what? You know why that happened, right? Is because this guy right here on the Eastlink stream said, "Man, this thing's moving pretty quick. We're into the pick number 14." And then the thing just came down to a screeching halt, and it just started grinding. And again, to talk about being socially distanced, Kenzie and I are in the studios, and we have to be 6 feet apart, and we're standing the entire time. And as an idiot, I wore dress shoes. So after the 4.5 hours of standing with no break, I ended up in the fetal position on the floor afterwards. But I certainly do remember how long that first round was. And I remember you guys sticking through it. Your name gets called for Cape Breton.
Mhm.
You found out about Cape Breton a week before the draft.
Mhm.
What was the initial thought on hearing you're going to Cap Breton?
Well, I pretty much like not that I knew, but it's like in my head, it was like I'd heard like from my goalie coach that like Cape really wanted me at 17, and I was listed 34. Like I was listed end of the second, and they really want me at 17. So I'm like, is it really? Am I really gonna be a first rounder? Like, am I like, is that really gonna happen? Like, no. So as I Google like Cape Breton, I see it's 14 hours away. I'm like, that's not gonna happen. Like, I'm not gonna move that far away. Like, and then. I just hear them announce my hockey team, and I know they're announcing for me, and I was just like, "Oh my God, like, this is crazy." And it didn't really hit me, and then, like, Jake Grimes, was the head coach at the time, he called me. Then I think, Jacques Carrier, sorry,
Yep.
I'm sorry to Jacques, but I can't remember his name, or GM. Um, he had called me, and so then I'm like, all these people are calling me. I'm like, I don't know who these people are. I'm not retaining the name, you know. I'm just like, I'm not really paying attention to like what they're saying. I'm just like, my dad's like, who called you? I'm like, I don't remember. You know, it's just like it was pretty surreal. Um, and yeah, my goalie coach had came over to say hi and like celebrate with us quickly, and then it was a pretty cool night. It was I did an interview with Patty McNeil that night too, so that's one of the first time I met Patty, and yeah, it was an unreal experience.
You're muted there, Jeremy. There we go.
I'm not sure what happened there, but anyways, actually, I think my dog started barking, so I muted the microphone. But there we go, we're back. But no, you end up in Cape Breton, and again, it's COVID. It's a little things are a little different. You get into Cape Breton, you have to isolate for was it 2 weeks at that time?
Yeah.
It was 2 weeks, but just take us through like your first season, the memories of that. You know, the everything from the weird schedule to the constant COVID testing.
And it was it's funny because I look back on it and I'm like, at 20 years old, I don't know if I could have been gone through that season. I don't know how our vets did it because it's like at 16, I'm like, oh, this I don't know any different, right? This is to me, this is normal because this is all I've experienced. But let's say if I was in my fifth year and this year was a COVID year, I don't know if I'd be able to survive that. It was crazy. Like, so I get drafted. They tell me like, oh yeah, you're coming to camp. You have to come here. You have to quarantine for 2 weeks. And I drove up with Jacques, uh, FJ Buto, and one other guy, and like we drove together all the way up. And so I'm leaving my family for the first time in a car with three people I don't really know, right? And then I'm coming up, and we're locked in a hotel for 2 weeks. Um, I'm in this new place so far away from home, and it was just like, yeah, it was a crazy start. And then I remember my like the season start. I'm like meeting like all the vets that were there. You know, I had like Jared Baker. I got there. I'm 16. Bakes had a full beard. You know, Sean Element, toughest guy in the league. You know, like one of them. And like I'm just hearing rumors about him before he arrives, and then I see him, and then you know we had like Nathan Rose was another 20-year-old we had, and they were awesome. They were great vets. I couldn't have had any other better veterans, but to go through a season like that was pretty crazy. Just like stop and starts because of COVID and teams testing positive. Like we never played Moncton that year.
Mm.
And then at Christmas, going home for a month because COVID's riling it back up again. And then after that, we only play Halifax and Charlottetown. And we're in our first year of our rebuild. Charlottetown's going for the cup. And Halifax also still had like Justin Barron, Desnoyers, LaRue. They had like young Dume. I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of guys too on that team, and it's just like that was just and my starter that year was injured pretty often, so that year was just kind of thrown to the wolves. You know, I didn't have the best stats, but I definitely got a lot of shots, and it was fun. Um, but definitely a crazy time.
Yeah, you faced a lot of pucks in that, especially against that Charlottetown Islanders during the COVID era. My goodness,
Uh,
that was well, and again, you talk about the trip going to Charlottetown and going to and from Prince Edward Island. Patty told me about it, and even like Jim Holt and Spider told me the boys are basically on house arrest. So you talk about
mhm.
not being able to do it in your 20-year campaign as a member of the Islanders. Oh, but I don't know. I don't know how those guys were able to pull that off.
It,
That was a crazy year. Um, but again, you persisted. You got through it. And it was one of those things where with Cape Breton, I know it was, there was some ups and downs, but for
Hmm.
you to come away finally with an MVP there. I mean,
Hmm.
give us a summation of the years in Cape Breton without COVID. And I know we'll be talking about the playoff run soon enough, but like,
Hmm.
overcoming some adversity on the island.
Yeah, no, that first year, like, they didn't even mention it, but every time we went to PEI, we had to get tested, and we were because we weren't allowed to stay there overnight either for a good part of the time we were there. So it's like we drive up at like 6 a.m., wake up at like 5, drive at 6, go up to PEI, get there, test, everybody pass the test, play the game. Then that night we normally have a back-to-back in Halifax. Drive to Halifax, sleep in Halifax, get there at like 2 a.m., and then play an afternoon game there. And that was just like it was so ridiculous. Like I honestly don't know how how that was actually possible to do, you know what I mean? But yeah, no, my time in Cape was pretty crazy and pretty up and down, you know. Starting off 16-year-old year, I don't think our team was that bad, but just the circumstances really like hurt us of playing against Charlottetown all the time. And then 17, we were in a division that was stacked. You know, we again that team like we weren't great. Like we're still in rebuild, but you know we have Bathurst who went for the cup. We had St. John who was hosting the cup. Charlottetown who lost in the finals, and Halifax was still, you know, Halifax has always been good. You know, so that was a pretty tough season too. And that season I was with Remy Dafontaine. We were splitting the time, and so two 17-year-olds on a rebuilding team, that was pretty cool for us, but tough in some circumstances. But yeah, and then 18, we got better my 18 year. You know, Ivan had a really big season. He helped us a ton, and yeah, and then last year was a great run we had.
Yeah, and one thing I've always found awkward is, going back to the playoffs is when the two teams travel on the same plane together, and
Hmm.
you got to experience that last season against Big Homo. What's it like as a player? Because that series wasn't necessarily the friendliest.
No, so we had flown. Actually, first round we played against Rimouski, and Rimouski kind of gave us an extra like boost of like determination because Cape Breton to Rimouski is 966 kilometers. The cutoff to fly is 1,000 kilometers. So if it's 1,000 kilometers, we have to fly. And so we were at 966, and we requested to fly, but then Rimouski has the right to allow or deny, and they denied it. So we had to drive 10 hours, and our bus caught fire the week before, which is just a crazy, crazy. All the buses caught fire at the warehouse in Cape Breton, and then so we had to drive in like this not great bus and all the way there. And then second round, we flew with Shikumi, but that time we had such a it's Shikumi, we kind of dominated them at home. So, you know, and there wasn't really an animosity in between us two teams at that point. Like, I don't know, it was a pretty calm series in terms of that, like brawls and all that stuff. But versus Bakemo, there was a lot of tension in the plane, you know. That after game four, like I got pulled in game four, so I was just like down in the dumps. I was like, wow, I just like lost us a game in the playoffs. This is bad, you know. And we're in the plane, and then Bakemo comes on. You know, everybody's looking at each other. You know, but you could cut like the air with a knife, and it was just like, wow, it was crazy to be in that situation.
Yeah, the that Baie-Comeau series was pretty wild, but to go to the start of that playoff run, and again, you're Cape Breton has had, it's been since '07 since they made it to the third round of the playoffs. This was a great group that you had. There was the chemistry was tremendous there. What was the what was the message and what was the mood like from that group going into the postseason?
You know, that team is gonna be like I remember my AM double B season, that was a team that I'm always gonna remember. I'm super close to everybody on the team. And next to that season, last year in Cape Breton was the most fun I ever had playing hockey. Like everything just clicked, you know? And like we made small trades at Christmas that year and then the year before that just impacted us heavily by guys overperforming what they were supposed to do, you know what I mean? And it was just there's not a single guy on the team that I would ever feel like shy to reach out to, you know what I mean? Like I was really close with everybody on that team and we just were bought in, you know? Like we really, really believed in ourselves and we were like we were so big, so like defensively strong. So we had like guys on 3, 4 lines that could score. So it was just like we had this belief in us that was just like we were so confident going into games, you know, like we knew that we can bully the other team or we knew that we could win, like, and it was unreal. And you know, we were bought in from the fourth line to this last D pair all the way up to the coaches, you know, and it was really special and it was the best time I ever had playing hockey.
You talk about the coaches. Louis Robitaille announces he's going to
Hmm.
Russia to coach
Pretty crazy.
minor pro. What's your thoughts on that? Considering that you played under him.
Well, Louis is a great coach, you know. He you know, I'm sure everybody's seen the interviews with him and you can tell Louis has a lot of heart and that's how he is day in, day out. So yeah, I loved having Louis as a coach and it was amazing.
If you go back to just this past season, with Charlottetown,
Mhm.
you shared the net with Donald Hickey.
Mhm.
Being a veteran in this league, what did you see in him that will arguably make him, one of the top goalies in the league? I guess as early as next season.
The thing like with Don is just he's the hardest worker I've ever seen, you know? Like out of any guy I've ever played hockey with, like he shows up like I'm eating my pregame meal at 3:30 and I like guys have told me like he's at the rink at like 3:45. Like I'm finishing to eat and he's already at the rink warming up. And even for practices, you know, like there was one day I had to go to the hospital for an x-ray or something like that. And yeah, for an x-ray. And my x-ray was at like 6:50 in the morning and I just went straight to the rink and so I was waiting there, and that was the only day I was the before Don at the rink, and I held that against him all year that I made it to the rink before him one time. Because even on practices, he showed up 2 hours before, you know, and he's just like after practice in the gym for like an extra hour or something, stretching or working out, or 2 hours, who knows? I was long gone by the time he was still at the rink, so.
I remember talking to Paul Drew about that this year about how uh, you and Don and he said you guys were a perfect yin and yang in that
Mhm.
you were able to kind of show Donald how to be a little bit more light on things, and
Mhm.
he also kind of pushed your work ethic a bit. So, what can you say about being coached by Paul?
Paul's great. You know, I was really lucky in my Q career to have I had Chuck Grant, I had Scott Guthrow, Blade Man Dixon, and then now Paul. I'm like I got like the best goalie coaches almost there is in the queue, you know, and it was awesome. Paul's like so like Don is very when you say yin and yang, me and Don couldn't be further opposites in the way we play. And Don's all athleticism, all reaction and everything, and I'm very like I just like to sit back, use my eyes, use my feet, and make saves without barely moving. So to have like that was like there was a lot more, let's say like Paul would spend a lot more time trying to work Donnie in type of thing and then but Paul was just so interested in like talking and learning, you know, so if there's things I did differently or just asking my opinion on certain things that are going around the goalie world, you know, he's just Paul's super eager to learn and that was I really appreciated having him as my coach this year.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is your jersey number 52.
Mhm.
It's not a very common number, but you also brought up, I'm probably going to butcher his name, but Peter Ketchkov. You guys kind of share the same goalie number, if I'm not mistaken. Like, is there
Yeah.
what's your reasoning behind 52?
So that number was just kind of random. I just like that was my first year where I got to choose what number I wanted. And I was just like, what do I want? Like I don't know what I don't want 33. I always hated 33 for some reason, and I got stuck. It was I had 33 or one as an option. I'm like 33 at 16, but then 17 I'm like I want to change my number. What do I want to take? And I was just like, you know what? I used to really like Ray Lewis back in the day, so I'm gonna take 52. And then so I took 52, and then it was just a complete like it was so random to see Kachetkov had 52, and I'm just like, wow, like that's what are the odds he has 52? And I actually like the way he plays, you know. So that was just a coincidence.
I do love that you got 52 for Ray Lewis. That's a that
Yeah.
I did not know that. That is a tremendous, tremendous nod to one of the greatest backers of all time.
Hmm.
That is awesome. Um, this year with Charlottetown, I know it was you went back to a rebuild, but the second half of the year with the Islanders, you guys were playing some of the best hockey in the league.
Hmm.
We just had Jim on last week.
Hmm.
What was it that you saw in this team this year that should give Islanders fans a lot of promise for the season coming up and moving forward?
I think the biggest thing with our team is just that the guys have a lot of heart and a lot of drive to win. You know what I mean? So like the guys on our team are really really driven. And you know, for me being back on a rebuild this year, you know, I was kind of like not upset about it, but I was just like, it was different. You know, just gone for the cup and had like an amazing playoff run and MVP, and then to go like step back, I was just like, I had a hard time digesting it at first, but then at one point I just realized, you know, like let's just have fun. You know, like there's no pressure, so just like you know. And then I committed to play hockey at McGill, so I'm like, I already know where I'm going to play next year, so I was just like, let me just have fun with this and just really try to enjoy my last time in junior. And yeah, so the guys are really, really driven, you know. Everybody's pushing each other, so much so to the point of like almost fights in practice, you know. We have a lot of guys with a lot of pride, and that's the best part about our team, and like their success next year. I'm sure they're gonna have success next year, and it's gonna be because of their character and how driven and proud they are of themselves, you know, and they want to win.
Now I heard you're someone who's very proud of their Italian roots,
Hmm.
and you mentioned Patty McNeil earlier. You were in an interview with him, and you talked about your Christmas Eve tradition of going to your grandparents' house. So what's Christmas Eve at the Ruccias like?
Yeah, that was probably my favorite tradition, but after COVID, you know, that COVID ended a lot of traditions, but Christmas was the best time of the year. We used to do the 24th at my grandparents, so my dad's side, and on the 24th used to be my grandfather's side of the family, so the Italian side, and then the 25th was my grandmother's side, the French side. And you know, like it was just huge family, and so we'd be like 40 people, and it was just really awesome. You know, I had one of my uncles would bring like a board game and teach us a new board game every year, and I really look forward to that. And that was one of the highlights for me. But then also just being around all my family was just really awesome.
Lots of grappa going around.
What's that? Sorry.
Lots of grappa going around.
Oh yeah. I don't think so. I don't, unless it was behind my back because I was too young, but I didn't see a lot of that going around when I was young.
You're off to Italy tomorrow. You're going
Yeah,
you're going back to the roots. What are you looking
yeah.
forward to the most about going to Italy?
Seeing my family over there. Like I got to meet a lot of them last time I went down 2 years ago. But yeah, so I'm really excited to see them. It was, you know, for a lot of them, it was the first time I met them in my life, and they welcomed me like as if they knew me my whole life, and that's how it felt. You know, like seeing them felt just as much as I was going to my mom's or my dad's. You know, I was just seeing family. You know, and it was really awesome. So I'm excited to see that, and obviously the food. Like, there's no beating the food, so I'm really excited to eat pizza over there.
Can't go wrong with that. I could go for some of that right now. But well, I guess yeah. Other than trip to Italy, what's on the summer plans?
Um, Not much, just going to Italy. I'm going there for 18 days. Then when I come back, I still have a bit of time off to start working out, and then I'm going up to Cape for a week in the end of June, and then start my summer grind. I'm gonna be working pretty much every day. So I coach goalies, so coaching every morning, Monday to Friday, and then I'm also gonna be coaching in the gym uh, after working on the ice. So it's gonna be pretty full in terms of work, and then practices in the afternoon or morning, and workouts. But other than that, nothing really special.
But you do have the big decisions coming up for
Hmm.
where yourself, Rudy, Mathis, all the guys are playing their hockey because
Yeah,
you were telling us before we went on the air you have a team of goalies that all play out. Tell us a bit about that
yeah.
team and about who we can expect to be the all-star lineup of that squad.
It's so we play. We're all a bunch of Q goalies, NCAA goalies, or pro goalies, and so it's the core of us that like work at the rink. We work, practice, and train together since we're like 10, even younger than that. And so then last summer they were missing a team for the 3-on-3 league at the rink, and we were like, let's make a team, you know. And so yeah, you know, we got like me, Russo, Rudy Emo, Anthony Marone, who used to play for Drummondville. Thomas Gill plays NCAA. Olivier Charlot played in Blainville and Baie-Comeau. Josh Fleming, Dan Hiru. He was drafted to Halifax actually. He went the U.S. route, and I feel bad if I'm forgetting anybody, but I don't think I am. Justin Katz, he plays for Cornell this year. So that's pretty much our team. So we're all goalies, and then we we played last year in the prep league, and now we have to move up the division, I think, because we're starting to get a bit too old for that division, and so we'll see.
What's the strengths of this team now? What if you were to do a scouting report on the goalies playing forward and defense team? What are they? What was opposing coaches looking for?
I think by no surprises our defensive game. You know, the hockey IQ and defensive awareness are pretty good, so we don't allow much. And also the fact that we're playing against players. So players are playing 3-on-3 for fun, but it's a challenge for us, so we're playing to win. So there's a lot more intensity in our game than the other guys.
I love it. That'd be some quality hockey to watch. I'd pay to watch that, I think.
Uh, Come on down, we need the fans anyway.
Well, yeah, and again, like the 3-on-3 Montreal, like the summer Montreal scene. I know that there's the summer skate in Nova Scotia that Sidney Crosby puts together, and the guys are just banging on the doors to try to be part of that. But what can you say about the summer hockey scene in Montreal?
I don't know a whole lot about it, but there's that the Sisu League or something like that. I forget what it's called, but it's just all pro guys. So it's all NHL guys, and obviously you have a lot of Montreal players who from their camps like go on those teams, and a couple of guys that train at our rink are also on those teams, and it's I haven't gone to see a game yet, but it's NHL caliber 3-on-3, you know. So I think they sell. I don't even know if they sell tickets or not, but if they do, then it's packed every night, you know. So they're making money with that if they are. Mhm.
And you talked about Rudy being part of that team. You, Rudy, Mathis, you guys train together. Are you surprised to see him going 23-0 so far?
You know, I'd be lying to Rudy if I said that I was surprised, that I wasn't surprised, because, you know, we've been training together, you know, and it's just, it's crazy. Rudy's been playing amazing, and, you know, I'm really happy for him to be playing this well, you know, him being drafted to Detroit. I'm sure that pulls him up in the rankings they have over there, because I know they have a lot of goaltending prospects, so you know, I'm really happy for him, you know, and he's making a name for himself where he didn't really have one a few years ago. So, it's awesome for him, and like I said, I'm happy for him.
I think you mentioned McGill next season. Is that correct?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there any once the NCAA change rule came around? Was there any opportunities for you to go down south, or was McGill kind of your mindset all along?
Well, it was kind of I was kind of open to it at first. I know there was one big school talking to my agent or something like that. But sorry, to me, it was going into AA. You know, we have Q scholarships in place for when we go into the league. And from what I heard from other guys going over there, that scholarship money doesn't carry over. And well, I'm not sure about it. I know there's a whole gray area because the rule's so new. So I might not be saying the truth right now, but um, yes, there's that. And then the education's so expensive if you don't get a full scholarship, and if you go to Ivy League, they don't give you a scholarship, and that's a there's just like for me, there's just no way that I can pay an education at that price. Um, but also it's just all like being able to go play for Miguel. I get to move back home. You know, living at home after 5 years away from home feels really good. I get to get my scholarship money, and it's a great opportunity, you know, going into the Blade. If I go to a smaller school, then I'm stuck playing against the big schools again, and that's pretty much my acute career, you know, being in rebuilds 4 out of my 5 years. You know, I don't really feel like doing that again in NCAA, where McGill's established and one of the top teams in the league, you know. So that's just it's a great opportunity for me to have a chance to win again.
And a great education as well, going to McGill,
Yeah,
man.
exactly. It's the Harvard of Canada, right? So
Yeah, I'm proud of you on that, man. So what are you looking at taking?
I'm gonna go into phys ed this year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we can't hold you up anymore because you got to start packing. You got to get ready to have that Italian pizza. Believe it or not, we had an Italian exchange student on one of our basketball broadcasts this year,
Oh yeah.
and was asked what his favorite food was. He said pizza, and when asked what kind of pizza, he said Pizza Hut, which blew my mind. 'Cause he's like, I love Pizza Hut. We don't have it over in Italy. That's you're from the land of pizza, but Pizza Hut's the one. So sure,
That's
why not?
crazy.
I mean, if
I
you
haven't eaten commercial pizza since I went to Italy.
you say no, sir, I cannot. Man,
Yeah,
someday I'll get my chance at the Italian pizza for sure.
yeah.
Nick, or you bring me back a slice and I go up and see Montreal.
I'll do that if you want.
I
My
appreciate.
grandfather has a wood oven, so he's got the wood oven furnace and everything. So if ever you
Oh,
come down, let me know, and I'll definitely have you over.
I'd love that, man. And again, it's always been always. It's going to be weird being at the rink and not chatting with you before the games
Hmm.
next year, and I always appreciated that, Nick. So, I'm pulling for you in McGill. And
Thanks, Mavs.
yeah, man, it's enjoy Italy, enjoy the summer, and get ready for that Redmond hockey.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it. It's gonna be different. It hasn't hit me that I'm not gonna be in the Q next year. You know, 5 years of my life being in there, and it doesn't hit me that I'm not actually going to be in that environment next year. So, but I'm really excited to be to for next year to play for Miguel.
And the U Sport experience will hit you real quick, and you'll be right back at it, and
Hmm.
you won't miss a beat.
Yeah, thank you.
Great chat with Nicolas Ruccia there. We talked a lot about his time in Cape Breton, and as I said in that first ad read, this is a big Cape Breton specific one. Cape Breton, Sydney, your internet with Eastlink has just gotten faster. We've just announced 1 gig internet for Sydney. That's right. Um, my mom complained enough. No, I'm kidding. But now mom's internet is faster. She can check her Facebook 17 times faster. Mom, who has the best cookies in the league, don't believe me. Just ask Mario Cicchini.
Let me know if this is the best cookie in the QMJHL.
What is it you want me to say? It's the best cookie.
You tell me.
I need to mean it though.
You tell me. This is the best cookie in the league. I'm waiting for the call. He's thinking.
It's the best cookie in the league.
There we go. It's right for the commissioner.
But that's right. We're announcing that Eastlink internet is now 1 gig speed in Sydney. So you want to make sure that you're part of that perfect pair. Unlimited wireless, 1 gig internet, perfect pair, 99 a month. It is eastlink.ca. 1-888-345-1111, or go into the store. I know the good, hey, and we're talking Sydney, the good people at the Mayflower Mall are going to be able to help you out. Okay. And again, I'll bring up my mom. Mom was having an issue. I can't go in. Now, again, it would be unethical for me as an Eastlink employee to use. I can't get into there. I can't. There's no way. Again, I'm a sportscaster. You don't want me anywhere near that back end. So I told that to mom. Mom went to the Mayflower Mall. They were very helpful to her there. They got her all set up. So make sure you go see the good folks at our Eastlink retail operations, eastlink.ca. You can do the online chat. That works too. Call 1-888-345-1111. Find out how you can get the perfect pair of unlimited wireless 1 gig internet. Now 1 gig in Sydney. As of this recording, as of today, I had a meeting with marketing and they told me, Mavs, go ahead. Let them know. Let the good folks in Sydney know. Let them know that 1 gig internet. Let the folks in North Sydney, Sydney Mines, the whole gamut of Sydney River. The good people of Sydney River now have 1 gig internet. They're rejoicing on Kings Road tonight that they have 1 gig internet from Eastlink. And you can find out more at eastlink.ca. All right, Jeremy, that will we're wrapping things up here. Again, thanks to Nicolas Ruccia for joining us. Plenty of chats with him as a member of the Eagles and as a member of the Charlottetown Islanders as well. He's one of those guys I was always happy to see when I got to the rink.
Yeah, it's going to be weird. I mean, there's so many really good graduating goalies this year, but there's also a lot of great up and coming goalies as well. So the future is bright in the nets here in the Q, and Ruccia. I mean, McGill's got a good one.
Yeah, and again, another kid that is able to use their Q experience to build up some funds for their scholarship and go on and get their university paid for through the education fund for the Q. And that's a big part of what the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League does. Because again, yes, we started by talking about Caleb Desnoyers trying to find himself up a draft board from 7th to 5th for the overwhelming majority of these players. The NHL draft is not in the future. Maybe some pro hockey is, but the Q does a great job of turning these young men into pros in other aspect of life. And again, it's a big part of what the Q does, and it feels like over the last couple decades, it's really become a major focus there. And I'm glad to see that that is always going to be a big part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Like these educational advisors, for the teams, they're heroes. They're not on the ice, scoring the goals or stopping the pucks. They're not behind the bench, giving the directions. But if it wasn't for the educational advisors, we probably wouldn't have. We'd have hockey, but we wouldn't have the quality of hockey and the quality of players and the minds that are going on to universities. It's unbelievable. It's there's so much admiration that we have to give to players and coaches, but behind the scenes, if it's all academics.
Well, again, I've been getting ready to interview Alex Carr a couple weeks ago at the Scotiabank Center, and it's an empty building except for one kid sitting up in the upper bowl, the upper bowl of the Scotiabank Center, and he points out, he says he's up there doing his homework, and I don't know who it was, but you know what? These kids, the buses and the empty arenas sometimes have to substitute for the classrooms, and the kids are hitting the books, especially now even more because there's going to be a lot of kids that are trying to make sure that they're going to be eligible for the NCAA. And a big part of that is making sure you have the proper courses. So that's another part of that, the academic advisors' jobs. I know I'll give a shout out to the Eagles academic advisor, Ryan Bubba McPherson. Bubba, a buddy of mine, but I know Bubba's going to be very proud of Nicolas Ruccia going to McGill. So that's he's always proud of the student athletes of the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League. But we can talk chemistry, history, biology, and all that fun stuff all we want, but we got to talk phys ed, and we got to talk about a hockey game to this moving forward. Moncton Rimouski, games 3 and 4. Moncton is definitely not out. They're not out of the woods yet. This is coming. It wouldn't surprise me if I get to see a Saturday.
Yeah, I'm banking on that one. When the series against Rouyn-Noranda, I don't think anybody predicted a sweep, and it just happened to end that way. We're definitely not seeing a sweep in this series. There's no way. We will be seeing you Saturday at the Big Ear.
The Big Ear, the Avenir. But yeah, again, it's an absolute blast. But again, who knows? Maybe, hey, you Moncton's only got to win one, and then they've got to win another, and then I might have to go up for a parade. But I don't know if they would do. They might do a thing before. I think you got to save the idea of a parade for the big one, not the.
Yeah, there's that as good as it would be to be Gilles Courteau Trophy champions. That's not the parade that I think the Wildcats are looking to have. So that one's first week of June. That's the one they're banking on right now.
Yeah. Well, we will be back with Around the Maritime podcast, and we'll be talking about Memorial Cup next time. Jeremy, thanks again.
Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure.
We will see you all around the rinks, potentially Saturday. Potentially. We don't know.